You get me, got you. You get me, feel it, you. You get me, got you. You get me, feel it, you. You get me, got you. You get me.
There's a war on democracy, and what are you going to do about it? You just want to appease. What are you going to do? There's war, and they're coming to take away our country. That's what a lot of folks would have you believe. That's the talk that we're hearing all day, every day. I'm here to fix it all. Hello. Nice to be with you. Thank you for joining us. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I'm your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group, a network of podcasts that examines what's actually broken in our democracy, and more importantly, how we can work together to fix it. So let's get right to it. Okay, I was being hyperbolic, obviously, at the top, but I wanted to draw attention to some of the language that we're deploying in trying to have these conversations across our differences. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the redistricting plans in Texas, and then the response in California. So today, what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk a little bit more in detail about what my position actually is, as well as what's happening in Texas and California, but then more importantly, how these conversations have been going. Because where I am not a professional politician, I'm not a professional analyst, a professional journalist, I pay attention to these things, so I have some thoughts on them. So it's just fair for me to share with you what I'm thinking. But where we have been spending a lot of time, obviously, is on how to talk to our neighbors, how to talk to our friends, how to talk to our relatives about all of this. So let me just share with you how I'm thinking about all of this. So starting with, we could go back to the early 1800s if we wanted to talk about the history of gerrymandering. And each party, I have hyper-partisan friends of various stripes that reflexively blame the other party. It's a futile exercise. It's a waste of everyone's time. I could write each partisan script for them. So let's do this in a little bit more nuanced way. We'll start with the most recent events. The Texas legislature and the Texas governor, at the prompting of the current president of the United States, basically did something that the questions I want to ask is it legal? Is it ethical? Is it wise? So legally, yes, according to the Texas's Constitution, they can do redistricting, but in particular, redistricting mid-decade. Technically, yes. Legally, they can do it. Is it ethical? The biggest case against the ethics of this, the integrity of doing something like this, is at the very least, this is very norm-breaking. To do this, there have been other instances when it has been done mid-decade, certainly in the 1800s and even into the 1900s and early 2000s even. So it's not like it hasn't been done, but this is an important norm. I've become an institutionalist in a lot of senses, and in a lot of events, a lot of moments, I find that I am in defense of good institutions. It's what binds us together. It's not to say that all institutions are perfect. If they're made up of human beings, they are not perfect. That's just the nature of what institutions are. And they are always in need of renovation and innovation. So don't hear what I'm not saying. But the norm of doing a census every decade and then redistricting to happen thereafter, there are enough shenanigans that happen within the norms and within the institutions. So I'm saying Texas, technically what they did is legal. Is it ethical? That's the other question. I'm saying mid-decade, it's not ethical, especially given the context of what prompted the redistricting. Now, the third question is it wise? I would make a pretty strong argument that it's not wise. Number one, Texas is already gerrymandered. They don't have, a lot of folks are pointing their fingers at California. Get the facts straight. California instituted about 15 years ago an independent commission that pisses off both the left and the right, pisses off the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. That's how you know it's a good independent commission. They actually drew U.S. House districts that allow for districts that I've been in up to this point, California 25 until I think it was 2020, and then the last couple of cycles, California 2020, California 27, in which in 2020, this district was decided by 333 votes out of almost 350,000 that were cast. If that's not a purple district, I don't know what is. I like living in a purple district. And that is a direct result of the independent commissions that California instituted. So getting back to is what Texas did wise? I would argue, no, it's not wise. From a political standpoint, at the very least, it's not wise because number one, they already gerrymandered the crap out of their district. So in order to create these supposed 5 new House seats for the Republicans, they're having to dip into majorities of other districts and make majorities of other districts thinner. The other assumption that they're making is that every vote that was cast is going to cast the same way in 2026 and 2028 that was as it was cast in 2024, because that's how they're drawing their lines. They're basing the map on the 2024 results. Great, that's all good, but you're assuming that those 2024 voters are going to vote exactly the same way in the next election. You're going to have the same type of turnout, the same type of results. That's not a good assumption. And by the way, even if you go back one cycle, our friend Mike Madrid pointed out that Beto O'Rourke won 3 out of those 5 districts as they're being drawn now. So you don't have to go into the 1800s. You don't have to go into the 1990s. You don't have to go that far back to know that these 5 districts, at least 3 of them were won by a Democrat in a statewide election. So the other thing is that you can't assume that there aren't other districts that now, if Democrats put up a strong candidate and craft messaging that is responsive to their constituents, that they can't win districts that are now thinner, that have thinner red majorities than they would have otherwise without this redistricting. So I don't know if it's gerrymandering so much, and I'm going to steal another phrase from Mike Madrid. I think the word he used is dummymandering. So is it gerrymandering or is it dummymandering? I'm putting a lot of question marks next to whether it's wise or not. California's response. Now, here's my position. I do not believe that the way to respond to anti-democratic actions is with more anti-democratic actions. That's where I stand on redistricting. Essentially, what you're doing with redistricting is, especially without the way that they're doing it, is they're allowing a state that has a supermajority of one party, in this case California, essentially to draw the maps that they want. That is not advancing democratic representation. That's diluting certain voices in this case 5 different districts in California. And I'm in favor of voices being heard, of votes actually mattering. So I'll just give you an example. The districts as they're being drawn, what I saw would put me from a completely different district. I'm in a valley here, Santa Clarita Valley, and I'm currently in California 27, along with Santa Clarita Valley, where I live, where I do business, where I shop, where my kids grew up, where I have friends. The maps as they're being drawn right now are going to put me into a different district. I'm not going to be with my friends and neighbors and family in California 27 because I happen to be about, I don't know, a quarter mile on the other side of the line. I'm now in California 26. So my district is mostly with people that are 30, 45, and 60 miles away from me that my kids didn't grow up with. Nothing against Oxnard, nothing against Camarillo. I've passed through there many times, but I don't live there. My kids didn't grow up there. I didn't go to church there. That's not my district. I don't know the politics there. I haven't invested years of my life in building relationships with people that were part of Mike Garcia's staff, that are now part of George Whiteside's staff, and getting to know the candidates themselves and getting to know the issues that matter to Santa Clarita Valley. So it's going to affect me. My voice, I'm going to have a vote. That's great. But I'm going to have a vote for a district that's drawn mostly that doesn't really have to do with my house and my neighborhood and my neighbors, where I do business. So I have a problem with the way the maps are being drawn right now on that level alone, just from a personal voter standpoint. The other reason I have a problem with it is, again, it dilutes certain voices in certain districts. And once you proceed in that direction, there ain't no going back. I think there's this assumption that once we move toward anti-democratic tactics in order to respond to what we see as the anti-democratic actions of another state or even a federal government, a federal administration, that we can just snap right back to the most democratic, representation, the perfect democratic republic. So I don't believe that. The way to fight back against anti-democratic tactics is not through reciprocal anti-democratic tactics. So the Independent Commission in California, while it's not perfect, is a democratic renovation that is or was a step in the right direction. It's not perfect, but it was a step in the right direction toward a more representative democracy. Submitting to districts that majorities can gerrymander into supermajorities is a major step backwards. So that's one of the reasons that I'm not in favor of it. Now, what I am in favor of is, listen, I'm in favor of aggressive actions. So don't get me wrong. Don't hear that I just want to lay down or appease. I am very much, and I've talked about this, I'm very much in favor of state level executives, governors, pushing back aggressively against the anti-democratic tendencies of this particular administration. So what am I talking about? How can a governor push back vertically against the anti-democratic practices? There are any number of things, and we've already seen them. And I'm interested in seeing how far a governor can push in terms of tariffs, for example, in terms of policing, in terms of immigration. There are any number of things where a governor can basically seize control of their state as a chief executive of their state. And I want to see those fights. And they are fights. They are legal battles. I want to see them play out. I would even be, and I'm going to say something really that some folks might think is being hyperbolic, but I would be very interested. We had somebody on here who in January or February, I think, who talked about putting a ballot on the California, a measure on the California ballot to explore CalExit. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about that yet, but I'd be interested in exploring it. After all, California is, if you separated California from the rest of the United States, it's the fourth largest economy in the world. There's a conversation to be had there, and there's a lot of states that are benefiting from the proceeds that California is sending to the rest of the country. But at the very least, there are specific issues where a governor can take more autonomous control and really test the vertical balance. We talk a lot about the horizontal balance of power. Hasn't necessarily been referred to that way, but legislative, executive, and judicial. I'm interested also in the vertical balance of power, federal, state, and local, where state elected officials can push back, especially when it comes to things that are anti-democratic, that remove autonomy at the state and local level, that remove our voices at the state and local level. And that's the same reason that I'm against redistricting. It dilutes certain voices and certain votes. So it's a very nuanced position. And I'm guessing that I'm pissing everybody off right now. I'm probably losing friends and maybe followers because there's disagreement. But that's the next thing I want to get to is I'll spell this out just a little bit more. But the next thing I want to get to is how are we talking about these things? That's the most important thing in terms of what talking politics and religion without killing each other deals with, is if we don't know how to talk about this, if we don't know how to work this out among each other over a drink or a coffee, around a table at a business networking meeting, if we can't have conversations about this without thinking that we're getting into a war with someone who disagrees with us, that someone is a terrible person. And I'll get into some specifics in a second, but that's really what I want to focus on a little bit here. So fair questions have been asked of me when I said if that ballot came on for Californians to vote on as to whether we should change California's laws to allow the state legislature to redistrict, I would vote against it. I would have voted against it because I like the Independent Commission. I like the renovation for democracy that it's represented. I like having more, and again, the Independent Commission, not perfect, but in terms of the U.S. House races, there's a reason we have purple districts here in California. More purple districts are better than less purple districts. We need to move further in that direction because the further away from actual representative democracy we get, it is not like we can just snap right back. So if that ballot comes on the measure and I get to vote, I'm going to vote against it. And if it's defeated, okay, great. At the very least, it's gone through a legal process. We could put the actions of California through the same matrix, I should say, that I put Texas through a second ago. Is it legal? Is it wise? Is it ethical? Is it legal? Is it ethical? Is it wise? Legally, if they're putting it through a popular vote, that's what they have to do in order for it to be technically legal. Right now, it's not legal. They can't just overturn the will of the people that put those independent commissions in place. So if it goes through the ballot, if it goes up for a popular vote, technically that would then make it legal for them to do that. Is it wise? I've already discussed it at length, so I don't need to belabor that point. Is it ethical? No, for the same reasons. Redistricting in mid-decade, it's breaking a norm that really risks the delicate balance that we've had for almost 250 years. So I look at all of these things. But again, I'm not saying that I don't want to have a fighting spirit and fight with every legal mechanism that we have, even in some degrees. I'm talking about the California version of Brexit. I'm sure some of my friends who are in favor of redistricting, of gerrymandering here, would push back against me about even saying that word out loud. So there are a lot of other mechanisms where we can test the anti-democratic tendencies of this particular administration. But to respond with anti-democratic tactics is not the way. What is a way? The best way, and this isn't being talked about in any of these conversations, is how about actually winning votes? How about winning votes? How about understanding why certain constituents, why certain voters voted differently than in 2024 than they did in 2020 and 2016, let alone 2018 and 2022, the midterms, the most recent midterms. You see the trends. There's a reason that voters are voting differently than what a lot of folks expected in the last few elections. It's not to say that Democrats did horribly since 2016. They lost in 2016 at the federal level, but they had really good elections in 2018 and 2020 and 2022. So let's not forget that. 2024 obviously went very much against them, but there are also really disturbing trends if you're paying attention. So what is it? What is it? I think to focus on, if you're looking at the actual information that's available to us, exit polls of people who actually voted. So this is not pie in the sky theory. This is actual practical, concrete material that we know is affordability, jobs, the economy. How about crafting a message that resonates with your constituents? Crafting a message and finding candidates that resonate with the voters whose votes have been trending against you. And as much as some folks feel passionately about certain issues, some of those issues just weren't resonating with the people who are actually moving one way or the other. So how about investing as much energy, if not most of your energy, into understanding what your voters, what is really important to constituents, and crafting and finding candidates and crafting messages, and then ultimately crafting legislation that responds to that: affordability, jobs, the economy. And I'm sorry. Well, sorry, not sorry. Not using all the right words and thinking all the right thoughts, including personal, including, not to, you know what I'm talking about. Like, I don't need to get into acceptable words among certain progressive friends, acceptable pronouns even. I will give you one example. The term Latinx, that did more harm than good. You lost more Latino voters over the insistence on using a term like Latinx than you gained. So if you want to die on that hill, if insisting on the use of a term like Latinx that a vast majority of Latino voters either don't know about or are very much against, if you insist on that, okay, then you continue to insist on that. Do you want to be right or do you want to win? That's my next question. Well, I certainly favor winning, whether it's a person with a D before their name, an I before their name, or even an R before their name, if there's someone who is in favor of our democratic republic. So as much energy as is being put into an anti-democratic response to the anti-democratic tactics of another state, I would much rather and not that we can't do both at the same time, I just disagree with this response. So that's my position. Now, Here's how it's been talked about. Um, and this is where the rubber meets the road for me on a day-to-day basis, these conversations. The some of the responses that I've gotten is I'm going to give you examples. I'm going to read some quotes. The GOP is a fascist party that has the power to destroy our democracy. Now, I think that you can make an argument that certain members of the GOP, in particular this president, has fascist tendencies and has taken steps to do great damage to our democracy. I just think we need to be careful about the GOP that's casting a pretty wide net. Every person, like, listen, I voted for Zet Valadares, who's a Republican member of the state legislature here in California, and I would vote for her again. So every member of the GOP is a fascist? The answer is no. The answer is no. This individual followed up by saying, we are in an all-out war. We're in an all-out war. So again, the language of war is dangerous language to deploy because then am I then required to see me? I mean, I voted for I voted for Republican issues and Republican candidates on the last. Obviously didn't at the top of the ticket, but I did vote for Republican candidates at the state and local level. So does that make me your enemy in this political war? Is every member not to, as well as when we start using words like an all-out war, what then follows? What is part of war? Political violence? Are you now justifying political violence? Because there's more. Trumpists don't care about principles. You are now so first of all, what do you mean by Trumpists? Trumpists? Does that everyone who happened to vote for Trump? Is it just all three times? Are you qualifying that at all? Trumpists? Anybody who ever voted for him? Ever? They don't care about principles? Anybody who considered voting for Donald Trump? I have people that I know and love who voted for Donald Trump, whether it's twice, three times, once, but Trumpists don't care about principles. Now you are dehumanizing individuals that I know and I love, and probably you know and love. So are you willing to dehumanize to the extent that you can engage in a all-out war, as you say? And then when I try to engage with someone that has this view, the GOP is a fascist party, we're in an all-out war, Trumpists don't care about principles. So this individual is making very clear how he feels, his mindset, that he's dehumanizing people who disagree with him. And I'm engaging with him as someone who ultimately agrees that this administration has taken steps that degrade our democratic institutions, our constitutional order, that I am very much in agreement of that, but I happen to disagree on this one thing. He was making an argument that if I am not fully in favor of and evangelizing for the gerrymandering of California's U.S. House districts, then, as he put it, I am hiding behind principles out of cowardice. Okay, so thank you for letting me know that I'm hiding behind principles out of cowardice. Now I'm thoroughly persuaded. Oh my goodness, I'm a coward, so I better change my mind and agree with you. That's very convincing. Not at all. So watch the way that you engage with people, because you're doing yourself more harm than good. You know, I've been in plenty of conversations like this. And similar language has been deployed in multiple conversations. So this isn't unique to this one conversation. An image, an illustration was used. If someone is dropping atomic bombs on you, that's what was said to me. If someone is dropping atomic bombs on you, they saw what Texas did as someone dropping atomic bombs on you. And he asked, well, what would you do? Are you just going to say, I'm going to stand on principle? Well, first of all, the language of if someone is dropping atomic bombs on you really isn't helpful. Because Texas is doing something again. Let's ask about it in the proper context. Is it legal? Is it ethical? Is it wise? That's probably a better context within which, because talking about atomic bombs, then again, are you justifying violence? Is that what is required? Otherwise, I'm a coward, which, by the way, again, is not very persuasive. I'm thoroughly unpersuaded, by the way. So if that wasn't clear already, if someone is dropping bombs on you, then what? Then what should we do? Should we go out into the streets with our axes and our guns and engage in the kind of violence that we saw on January 6th? Is that what you're saying? Is that the proper response? The answer is no. The answer is no. If someone is dropping atomic bombs on you, that's not an illustration that is helpful. That is not an illustration that is remotely accurate. We're not even talking about the same universe. So let's talk about these things in proper context. Let's not get hyperbolic. Your principles will result in the end of our republic. Yes, my principles. That's what I'm sure Dietrich Bonhoeffer was thinking in the war where atomic bombs actually were dropped. Not obviously it was Japan versus Germany, but 6 million people dying is actually much more akin to atomic bombs being dropped. So Dietrich Bonhoeffer had his principles, and he engaged. So your principles will result in the end of our republic. So a lot of these conversations can happen without getting hyperbolic, without shaming people, without putting people, individuals that happen to disagree with you, in a box that you're the cause of the end of our civilization. This is not helpful. When one faces an existential threat, one fights back. Great. Is it an existential threat? Texas is deciding to gerrymander. Texas is deciding to not just gerrymander, but further gerrymander. I have a problem with it. Mid-decade gerrymandering. They're already gerrymandered. Is that an existential threat? Really? Is that what we're talking about? An existential threat? If everything's an existential threat, nothing's an existential threat. This is total political warfare. No, it's not. I probably could have done my entire podcast. This is total political. No. Nope. MAGA are not your fellow citizens. Actually, yes, they are. They are enemies of democracy. Well, again, how are you defining MAGA? Is it somebody who happened to vote for Donald Trump? Is there a club card? Do you have to apply for, you have to go through initiation? Or is it just somebody who happens to have bought a red hat one time? I don't know. What is MAGA or not your fellow? So now, if I happen to have a kid or a cousin or a friend or a neighbor or somebody I've done business with, and they happen to have voted a certain way one time or 3 times or however many times and even got the hat, they're not my fellow citizens? They're enemies of democracy? I'm not willing to go there. I still want to see however they may have voted on one line of their ballot. That's one line of their ballot. I'm not willing to see them as my enemy, let alone enemies of democracy. You want to hide your head in the sand? No, actually, I don't. I want to have conversations with people that may have happened to have disagreed with me on one line of my ballot. And I've heard this. I've heard a version of this. I can't even count how many times. You want to bring a wet noodle. You can't. Dems need to stop bringing a wet noodle to a gunfight. It's not a gunfight. All right. I know that you're using an illustration. You're using illustrative language. You're using an analogy or whatever the hell it is. The more you talk about this, the more you are creating an environment that includes the possibility of violence. And you're justifying violence, let alone the way that you're dehumanizing people who happen to have disagreed with you, including me, because I voted the way that you voted for at the top of the ticket. I just happen to disagree with you about California's response, and I'm going to vote differently if it comes up for a measure for Californians to vote on. But you're saying gunfight, you're saying enemies, you're dehumanizing to the point where you're justifying now this, at the very least, violent, a mindset of violence. and the same person, this is several different conversations, but the language is the same across a lot of it, a lot of different threads. And one sentiment is, we can get back to normal politics whenever fill in the blank. We can get back to normal politics whenever fill in the blank. No, we can't, right? Once we take steps in a certain direction, it's not like we can just snap our fingers and say, okay, well, we're going to do it. We're going to take advance, because this mindset doesn't just go away. This is a disease. This is a pernicious disease. And it doesn't just go away. We can't just wake up tomorrow and decide that the people that we're now saying are not our fellow citizens are our fellow citizens. What do you think is going to happen to them? All of them, these people that you're dehumanizing and are saying are enemies of democracy, they're not going away. 70 something million people, they're not going away. So we can get back to normal politics when? When all of those 70 million people are defeated, what does defeat look like? Where are they going? And do you think that this language is going to persuade them to vote differently next time? Or the small percentage of people, whether that's 9% or 6% or however many percent in whatever states and whatever districts, which, by the way, the districts are going away. So, with full gerrymandering, so we're not even going to have purple districts. So watch out what you wish for and what you gerrymander for, because it go against you if you're not careful. And this language, this line of argument isn't persuading anybody. Your approach is doing harm. Yeah, I'm willing to risk the possibility that me sitting down with somebody at a coffee shop, at a bar, in a Bible study, at a wherever, or hang out with them and go to, in and out after a soccer game that our kids play in, I'm willing to bet that that is not doing harm. In fact, I am betting on it. I'm living my life that way. So what are we willing to sacrifice? I'm willing to sacrifice my time. I'm willing to sacrifice the ability to see someone as a human being. I'm willing to sacrifice not indulging in the impulse to say, and by the way, it's not just one side of this. I had contributors that started their comment with hair new scum. One comment started that way, hair, like as in a reference to a fascist dictator, hair, and then new scum. Yeah, that's not helpful either, by the way. That's not persuasive at all. I no longer have any interest in anything else in your comment, even if you happen to vote the same way that I do if this ballot measure does, in fact, come up. So what am I willing to risk? I'm willing to risk my time and have risked my time. I'm willing to risk the possibility that somebody who votes differently or feels differently than me is a human being. I'm willing to risk I'm willing to invest in the practice of peace, of nonviolent resistance and nonviolent thinking. That's what I'm willing to risk. I'm willing to risk not giving in to the impulses to see everything as war and to fuel this mindset of violence. I'm willing to risk not indulging in the impulses to dehumanize my neighbor who has differences than me. So you may think that democracy is under attack, and in some ways it is, but let's be specific about it. You may think that there's a war on democracy, and I am part of the pro-democracy coalition, a very broad pro-democracy coalition. But that's going to be a different conversation for a different day, because the way these conversations are playing out are even more concerning than the issue itself to me. We need to be able to talk to our neighbors, talk to our friends, talk to our loved ones, talk to our family members that happen to feel differently about this issue. This issue. That's all I got today. Pissed off. Actually, not really. I'm going to go have lunch with somebody who disagrees with me. So as always, if you dig what we're doing here, remember to follow this show, write that review, and now you can watch these conversations on YouTube, youtube.com/@politicsandreligion. And by the way, the website, politicsandreligion.us, www.politicsandreligion.us. I'm at Corey S. Nathan and all the socials, at COREY, S as in Sam, NATHAN, at Corey S. Nathan, and Substack too. And I'll put the links in the show notes. Your support really does make a difference, so thank you for all of it. Now go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect. And have a great week.